Good evening, Africa, and welcome to Second Take. I'm Ashwyn Mberi, and tonight we take a cynical dive into the political spectacle across the continent. First, we have Ramaphosa dialing up Trump, a man who has slapped tariffs on South Africa and treated diplomacy like a bad reality TV show. No apologies, no breakthroughs, just another uncomfortable phone call. South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana proposed raising VAT, only to have his coalition partners threaten to bail out faster than you can say budget crisis. Meanwhile, Museveni continues to make Uganda's politics a family business, jailing anyone who dares speak of change. And Namibia's President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah promises free tertiary education by 2026. Sounds good, doesn't it? Let's just hope she has the receipts to match the promises. Grab your popcorn. This is Second Take, and we're not holding back. In a diplomatic gesture that felt more like a hostage video than a sovereign conversation, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa announced on X, formerly Twitter, now fully transformed into a global megaphone for men with Wi-Fi and no shame, that he had spoken with US President Donald Trump about peace in Ukraine and strengthening bilateral relations. If you're confused, you're not alone. Why is the president of a country teetering under load shedding, mass unemployment, and coalition roulette calling to talk about a European war that neither side can pronounce Poltava in? Simple political optics. Ramaphosa seems to need to appear globally relevant, while Trump is thrilled anyone outside Florida still picks up his calls. Since returning to the White House in January, after what some describe as an election and others as divine punishment, Trump has wasted no time reminding Africa of its place on his globe, somewhere beneath the oil rigs and military bases. He promptly expelled South Africa's ambassador and slashed aid, citing radical land reform and Pretoria's unpardonable sin of holding Israel accountable in The Hague, something the US views as an attack on Western righteousness, not a legal process. In response, Ramaphosa offered peace talks and polite conversation, a diplomatic equivalent of returning a slap with herbal tea. Let's be clear, this wasn't diplomacy. This was Ramaphosa calling the neighborhood bully to ask if maybe they could still be friends if he stopped snitching about apartheid's unfinished business. The result? South Africa gained no aid, no respect, and no leverage, but perhaps a meeting where it can once again be told what not to do. This is what happens when a liberation movement stays in office too long. It starts mistaking political caution for strategy and becomes fluent in the language of apology to people who've never said sorry. Staying with South Africa, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has shelved plans to raise VAT, not because it's immoral to squeeze the poor, but because it turns out the poor now vote with the rich. In a coalition government, your budget doesn't just need spreadsheets, it needs survival instincts. Godongwana, who once championed tough fiscal discipline, tried to sell the VAT increase as a bitter pill for a sick economy. The Democratic Alliance, however, threatened to leave the coalition like a drama queen in a WhatsApp group chat, warning that such a move would crush the poor. A bold statement from a party whose usual policy toward the poor is, have you tried Uber Eats? The ANC, long used to ruling like a solo act, suddenly remembered it's now part of a band, and this band has backup singers who don't harmonize. The threat of Parliament rejecting the entire national budget, a move so unthinkable it hasn't happened since democracy discovered vibes, forced the ruling party into retreat. The result? South Africans won't pay more tax, but they will continue to pay for the cost of no one making real decisions. The coalition lives another day, though not because it works, but because everyone involved is too terrified of what happens if it doesn't. Turns out poverty is bad, but losing power is worse. After a week of staring contests and long sighs in a five-star Qatari hotel, representatives from the Democratic Republic of Congo and M23 rebels agreed to stop fighting, at least until someone looks at someone the wrong way. The carefully worded joint statement denounced violence, hate speech, and intimidation, which for two groups who've built careers on exactly those things is almost charming. Like lions agreeing to a vegan diet. Insiders say talks were tense, with arguments over prisoner releases, trust building, and whether immediate ceasefire actually means soonish, depending on how annoyed we are. Qatari officials, who have mastered the art of making civil wars sip cappuccinos, managed to hold the egos together just long enough to secure the press-friendly breakthrough. Let's not be fooled by the handshakes and hashtags. The M23 crisis isn't about misunderstandings. It's about minerals, power, and neighbors with very long shadows. Rwanda's fingerprints are all over this conflict like DNA at a heist scene, but diplomacy prefers not to point fingers. Just issue statements and hope the cameras move on. So peace? Maybe. For now. In a plot twist, absolutely no one saw coming, except anyone who's ever opened a newspaper in Uganda, Dr. Kizza Besigye, the man who's run for president more times than Museveni has updated the constitution, was denied bail on treason charges alongside Haji Obeid Lutale because apparently wanting change is now a crime punishable by wheelchair. Frail from a hunger strike and looking like the ghost of democracy past, Besigye has become the poster child for Museveni's idea of due process, which loosely translates to hold them until they die or until elections are over. As the Commonwealth drafts letters destined for Museveni's shredder and lawyers keep filing bail applications like raffle tickets, the real campaign continues. Jail everyone who still remembers hope. Meanwhile, the government has tabled the UPDF amendment bill proposing that civilians be tried in military courts because nothing guarantees justice like a courtroom with camouflage and combat boots. Cooked up at State House during a cozy NRM caucus, the bill has legal experts panicking and activists waving red flags, while Museveni likely grins at the thought of turning military courtrooms into the new civil service. Opposition MPs warn of indefinite detention, reminding us that once Museveni gets a new toy, it's game over. On the corruption carousel, Museveni has hit back at claims that NRM MPs received UGX 100 million to back shady legislation like the coffee bill, denying the allegations as fiction, albeit fiction involving luxury SUVs and curious bank upgrades. Deputy Speaker Tayebwa chimed in, calling it strategic facilitation, which sounds like something you'd hear at a fraud seminar. As the opposition cries foul and the public sighs, Museveni reframes the scandal as a distraction from the opposition's lack of ideas, which is rich from a regime whose only consistent idea is stay in power. The coffee bill passed. The money vanished, and Parliament increasingly resembles an expensive loyalty program. The unveiling of a 40.7 trillion shilling budget added more sparkle with shiny promises of jobs, infrastructure, and industrialization, mostly for oil executives, politically connected contractors, and presidential relatives with vague job titles and fat allowances. With a 4.8 trillion shilling supplementary bill casually tacked on 77% of the population under 30 still waiting for opportunity, critics say the budget is blind to corruption and unemployment. The government says they just lack vision. And as Uganda warms up for another election season, the government has rebooted one of its favorite traditions, silencing journalists. At least 10 were assaulted, detained, or charged in 2024 for reporting too well, while satirical writer Kakwenza Rukirabashaija was tortured into silence, and alternative outlets like the alternative Digitalk were raided for sharing non-NRM approved thoughts, essentially sedition with Wi-Fi. With the Computer Misuse Act freshly upgraded, even an angry Facebook rant could land you in court, or worse. The message is clear. speak softly or not at all, especially near a ballot box. As Museveni preps for yet another term, the only thing transparent about Uganda's next election might be the absurdity of calling it one. Those have been our top stories. We're going to swing over into the TikToks of the week.
The ugly duckling was born. The ugly duckling had a very difficult... The ugly duckling had a very The ugly duckling had a very come on now, come on. Huh? The ugly duckling had a very difficult life. It learned quickly that while others get beauty, others get aggressively unfortunate features that not even a mother could love. Damn, that's crazy. But that's okay. The duckling still swam through life with dignity.
Take two.
Let's go.
I don't get people who need permission to live, and often people who have been constrained and confined by certain societal standards grow resentful of people that actually exercise their free will. You know, Beyonce said life is your birthright, and I think about that all the time. You know, living life, being alive, having moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm living. That's your birthright. And so to constantly seek permission to live from external forces, I'm not talking about parents, but I'm talking about, oh guys, I know this is not normal, but can I eat, yogurt with a fork instead of a spoon? Do you? Like...
It's a form of violence, right?
Am I a genius?
And are they sheeple?
Agreeing with everything I say?
What is she doing? I have no idea.
I've always known I was a leader, an alpha, a visionary.
Why is she looking at us like that?
It's getting weird. They're jealous. I get it. With a brain like this?
Are you okay?
Just admit it. You wish you were as smart as me.
You just said one smart thing. It's really not that deep.
If you're so smart, then
Solve the puzzle.
65, 72, 100.
Betty bought a bit of... The answer's 9. 9, yes.
Wrong. The answer's actually 9.
That's what I said.
You were speaking German.
But I do speak German sometimes. Volkswagen.
Point proven. Danke.
She is smarter than us.
Yep.
It's a form of violence, right?
Am I a genius?
And are they sheeple?
Agreeing with everything I say?
What is she doing? I have no idea.
I've always known I was a leader, an alpha, a visionary.
Why is she looking at us like that?
It's getting weird. They're jealous. I get it. With a brain like this?
Are you okay?
Just admit it. You wish you were as smart as me.
You just said one smart thing. It's really not that deep.
If you're so smart, then
Solve the puzzle.
65, 72, 100.
Betty bought a bit of... The answer's 9. 9, yes.
Wrong. The answer's actually 9.
That's what I said.
You were speaking German.
But I do speak German sometimes. Volkswagen.
Point proven. Danke.
She is smarter than us.
Yep.
What do you do?
I'm in investment banking. Basically, I invest and then I bank. Wahal.
No.
Wabat.
Please enjoy your meal. I'm enjoying my salad.
Maybe I'm reading
I'm
wrong.
enjoying my salad.
Last time I actually had this meal was in Italy. Wabat. It's either that or lamza. Kefe. Actually, I need to eat in peace. My brother, Billy, doggy bag.
Oh, wat dat tigo yang, ja lady.
Attack!
Ngiyabonga. Oh, mulas. Angeke. 700 trillion. 700.
Pass the ball, I'm open. Wait, isn't that your mom, dude?
My name is Mbali Nhlapo, and I'm a housekeeper.
Welcome back, and it is time for Namspective. Namibia's new president, Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, used her first State of the Nation address to drop a bombshell. Have a look.
I'm pleased to announce that from the next academic year, commencing 2026, tertiary education will become 100% subsidized by the government. That means no registration fees and no tuition fees. At all public universities and technical and vocational education centers. That's why I appeal to my parents. While this will be gradual phased-in approach, your contribution as families and students for now, listen to this, for now, underline that, for now will be towards accommodation and other related costs. I'm fully aware of some people who might have difficulties, but this is the position. We heard your cry, which is fees have fallen now.
So, starting 2026, all public tertiary education will be completely free. Not just discounted, not loaned, free. If it sounds too good to be fiscally stable, that's because there's a possibility that it is. In a country with rising youth unemployment, the announcement was met with celebration by students and potential students and confusion by economists. NSFAF will be folded back into government. To sweeten the pot, the president promised jobs and a diversified economy based on agriculture, fishing, and creative industries. To her credit, Nandi-Ndaitwah delivered the speech with confidence, vision, and the kind of optimism usually reserved for TED Talks. But the devil, as always, is in the delivery. Free education is a noble promise until you realize someone has to pay for it. Spoiler, that someone is usually the same underfunded system already failing to build enough classrooms. Still, if she pulls it off, history will remember her as a reformer. If not, Just another leader who mistook a campaign dream for a policy reality and left the bill in the inbox of the next president. We'll be watching. All right, let us swing over now to Global Take as we zone in on the Vatican. The death of Pope Francis has reignited that sacred Catholic tradition, global speculation disguised as piety. And among prayers and papal bingo cards, a quiet hope has grown louder. Could the next pope be black? To many African Catholics, this isn't a fantasy. It's divine justice, long overdue. With 281 million African faithful and counting, Africa is the church's fastest growing congregation and its loudest amen in every global mass. The church's future is African, but its leadership still mostly Italian, with a suspicious tan at best. Now, let's not forget, Africa has had popes, 3 in fact, back when Rome was still taking applications from Libya and Tunisia. Yes, Pope Victor I, Pope Miltiades, and Pope Gelasius I reigned centuries ago. Saints with scrolls, sandals, and skin tones that would confuse modern races. But let's be honest, they were African in the way, Cleopatra was African. Technically correct, it is correct, but not quite what Black Twitter had in mind. Fast forward to this year, after a papacy that saw Pope Francis shout "hands off Africa" in Kinshasa, a rare moment when the Vatican sounded like Fela Kuti. Many believe it's time for the church to let its most devout continent take the reins, or at least touch the steering wheel. There are contenders, rather. Ghana's Cardinal Turkson has the Vatican CV, DRC's Cardinal Ambongo has the fire, and Ivory Coast Cardinal Dogbo has the rising profile. Even Wilton Gregory, the first Black American cardinal, is on the bench, though Rome may see him as more Obama than our father. But this isn't a spiritual talent show. The College of Cardinals is 50% European and 90% allergic to anything that smells like change. These are men who still debate Latin like it's the future of communication. So the idea of a black pope, for many in that room, it's like asking your grandfather to give up fax machines. Not impossible, just deeply threatening to the order of things. Here's the thing. Wanting a black pope isn't about tokenism. It's about representation, about the church finally looking like its flock, about the average Ugandan or Nigerian Catholic child seeing someone at the altar who doesn't need sunscreen. That's a joke. But the Vatican isn't exactly known for catching up with the times. This is an institution that took centuries to apologize for the Inquisition, still can't quite figure out women, and treats African theology like it's a charismatic side of hustle. When it comes to power, the center of gravity remains firmly in Rome. And Rome, as history has proven, doesn't decolonize unless someone's holding incense and receipts. Of course, Vatican watchers will say we don't elect popes by race, and that's true. Popes are chosen through divine inspiration and backroom negotiations that would make an African parliament blush. Yet, the desire for a black pope isn't just about skin. It's about shifting the moral imagination of the church. It's about breaking the quiet assumption that holiness is best worn in white skin and Latin accents. It's about the possibility that the gospel can emerge from Kinshasa as much as Cologne. African Catholics know the odds are slim. The conclave isn't Coachella. There are no fan votes, and the church isn't a democracy. It's a monarchy with better outfits. But the hope persists, not just because Africans want a seat at the altar, but because they've earned it. And if the cardinals once again step out with white smoke and a white man, the faithful will smile, kneel, and pray. But somewhere, in a seminary in Lusaka or a cathedral in Lagos, a young black altar boy will still wonder, if God looks like me, why does his representative never do? Because even in the most sacred institutions, power listens last, but it does listen eventually. And that's a wrap for tonight's Second Take. From Ramaphosa dialing up Trump because who wouldn't want to have a chat with a man who's used tariffs like a toddler uses a tantrum, to South Africa's coalition leaders playing a high-stakes game of who can backpedal fastest, it's clear real governance is being left to the side. In Uganda, Museveni continues to tighten his grip, and those dreaming of change find themselves in ever-deepening water. As for Namibia's free education promise, it's a bold move. Let's just hope they've got a plan for the bill, because the devil's always in the details. Politics, as always, is about managing expectations while quietly raising taxes. Until next week, keep watching the spectacle. This was Second Take.